For those of you who are looking to learn the difference in here, so today I'm not going to go over every feature necessarily of Designer Edition. I'm going to kind of talk about Designer Edition and talk a little bit about the differences between Basic and Designer Edition, and then I'm going to focus a lot on the differences between Designer Edition and Business Edition. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So with this, I have right here, I am in Business Edition. And one thing that I wanted to say before I went more is when I do webinars, I love seeing your questions. I love seeing any sort of interaction, whether you are confused, whether you like a feature, whether you have a question. I love seeing that. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it as I'm going. I try to answer questions as I'm talking about them to make it relevant. If I don't answer your question, I'm either going to answer it later or I have a lot coming through. So one thing, feel free to say whatever you want in there, kind of get it going from there. How will you view this later? So this will be done. We are going to have this set up as a YouTube video. So we'll put this up on YouTube that you'll be able to see. Because it's Friday, I probably won't have it up until the end of Monday, just because basically you have to process the video, get it set up, all of that. Jerry, thank you, Jerry. Jerry said I was pretty. I more meant the software, but thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So you see I am working in Business Edition. So this is the highest level upgrade that Silhouette Studio offers. So Silhouette Studio is a free program. You can get it without a cutter, actually. You don't even need a Cameo or a Portrait to get Silhouette Studio. You can go ahead and download the basic version for free. It's great because you can learn what you're doing pretty quickly. So the Designer Edition upgrade is the first one. That's around $40. I always recommend, no matter what, to have the Designer Edition upgrade. And these are some of the reasons. So for Designer Edition, oops, sorry, I kicked something. Designer Edition allows you to bring in SVG files. Now that's a big deal because you can purchase a design from somewhere else and open it in Silhouette Studio. Now when you're just starting off with your cutter, your heat press, any sort of vinyl cutting, even paper cutting, sometimes it's overwhelming to have to learn how to use the machine, how to cut in the vinyl, how to press it, and then on top of that you have to learn how to design. So SVG files are awesome because you can kind of learn with your hands on how to do it, and then if you do want to design later, you can. If you don't want to design, you don't have to, because everyone provides SVG files. We have several of them, and maybe at the end of the webinar you will want to get some SVG files. So with that, Designer Edition is a big deal for that. There's also different features that show up in Designer Edition. There are different editing features, like you have more knife tools, so basically when you cut, you can cut in little shapes. And then the biggest thing that I always talk about is the rhinestone panel. So the rhinestone panel is only available in Designer Edition and up. So when I move on to Business Edition, everything that I'm talking about will also be included. So rhinestones are a huge thing. It's super easy to work with in Silhouette Studio, and it's a great way to get started with your rhinestones with really only a $40 software investment. So I always suggest that. And some of the newer features that they've added to Designer Edition is they've allowed you to do different warp options. So let me run down to the bottom here. We have our warp panel, so we can do different warp options in here. And then the big thing that people are loving right now are our glyphs panel. So the glyphs panel allows you to get special characters in your text. So we have all this here, and so with Silhouette Studio Designer Business Edition, a question just came in. Can you use it with a printer cutter? Yes and no. You can do a feature in Silhouette Studio that they call print and cut. So the way that works is that you set up your design and you'll set up areas that will be printed and areas that will be cut. So when you send your design to print, you're actually sending it to a printer. So if you have a home printer, or some people will set it up with like a small sublimation printer, they'll do that. And then what it does is the print and cut in Silhouette Studio. Let me go over here and I'm going to turn on my registration marks. Right here, to do print and cut, you would turn on these registration marks right here. So when you print it, it's going to print this black square and these little black parts here. So once you go to cut it, it will look for those registration marks and then cut accordingly onto your material. So kind of. You can pair it with a printer, but an actual print and cut machine is not, it won't work with Silhouette Studio, at least not now. We have a Graphtec CE6016 want to do the business decals for their store. How do we set up for the larger size? I'm just asking. Jim, that's a great question. I'm going to get back to that with Business Edition. And then Corel, someone asked, is it only for TRW? Corel is a base program. It's like the bigger version of Silhouette Studio. TRW Design Wizard works within Corel. So Corel is not only for TRW, but the wizard only works in Corel, if that makes sense. And so that's great software. If you want to move up later, that's an awesome software to start using. So let's go over here. Let me turn off my registration marks, and I have my settings. So over in the software, you're going to be familiar with this, even if you're using the basic. We have, you know, our line tools, our square, all of those different things. And we also have our page set up in here. So let's say I do want to cut with a cutting mat. So one thing to keep in mind is that the Cameo 3 does not have a load media or load mat option anymore. So we need to tell the software as we're doing it, hey, I am using a cutting mat. Make sure if you're using the cutting mat, you're feeding it in a little bit more so you're not cutting into my mat. So we're going to go right here under cutting mat. We're going to go and just do Cameo, turn it on right there. So now we have our cutting mat. One thing to note is that this white part goes down pretty far. Earlier today, I was cutting a piece of Easy Weed. It was a foot wide by 15 inches long, so I set my height to 15 inches. However, my red box right here indicates my safe cutting area, and you'll notice it stops right here at the bottom of the mat. That's because it's not going to cut further than the mat if you're telling them that you're using a mat. So we're just going to go over here and change our cut area back up to 12. So now we're all set with that. So now the main differences between Silhouette Studio, Designer Edition, and Business Edition are things that are helping you business-wise, that's why they call it Business Edition, to help speed up your production or make just file management easy. So one of the biggest things that I promote for Business Edition that is my favorite part is that Business Edition allows you not only to bring in different file types, but it now allows you to save as an SVG file, which is a big deal. They actually just added this feature fairly recently. So when I talk about different file types, let me go over and I'm going to grab, I'm going to open up my File Explorer and let me open something super fast real quick. Let me just grab it over here. So a lot of times we'll have our TRW designs and especially live templates. They'll come in an EPS file or they'll come in a CorelDRAW file. And unfortunately, Silhouette users haven't been able to use that before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my folder and I'm going to go over here. So I'm in my Rhinestone World folder and I'm just going to go over and I'm going to do TRW designs. And actually, I don't want that one, sorry. Live templates. And then let me go over here to templates. And I want to use the word layout. So we have word layout, mini pack, CDR, and then we have SVG. So I can open CDR, and I'm going to say preview because I have CorelDRAW as well. And I can go right here, and I can drag a design over to this side. So check this out. Now I can borrow parts of this design and kind of move this around. So let's go right here. So this is a CorelDRAW file. Now we do have to do a little bit of rearranging because we're working in Silhouette Studio, but the reason why I do think that bringing in Corel files and using Business Edition is useful is because you can open up Corel files, you don't have to find some way to convert it, it's not an extra step that you have to do, but also let's say you are using your Business Edition and you are crushing it and you are ready to get a bigger cutter. Well, up until now, you would have to recreate all the designs in Silhouette Studio that you made. So let's say you made a design and you got really good at designing in Silhouette Studio because you've been watching my webinars, and now since you have your bigger cutter, you don't want to have to replicate them all in Corel. Well, the cool thing is right here, I'm just going to go ahead and ungroup this, and let's go ahead, I'm going to kind of like reposition this text here, set that up, faith, hope, love. And then I will actually kind of leave it like this for now because I'm not cutting this. So let's say I have this all set and I'm like, yeah, I like this design. Guess what? I just got a new Graphtec CE6060 24-inch cutter, and I want to be able to cut this on my cutter. Oh no, like I don't want to recreate this file. Well, check this out. I can go over to File, Save As, Save to hard drive, and then we have our section right here. This little drop down, SVG. That's it. So now we can create a file in Silhouette Studio and save it as an SVG file, no problem. So those are the two main file parts of Silhouette Studio that I definitely love about Business Edition, and I think, in my opinion, those two kind of make it worth it all on its own. Just the fact that it can be compatible with some of the larger cutters, it can take in different file types, whenever you're ready to upgrade your software, but you want to have your cutter. I always love being able to design in Corel, not have to convert it and then open it in Silhouette to cut it if I want to. How long is the Business Edition good for? Does it expire after a new update? Richard, Business Edition is a one-time upgrade. So the cool thing, and that's another reason why I suggest it, is Business Edition as of right now and for the foreseeable future is the highest software upgrade. So that means when you have a new, when a new feature comes out and they say, okay, we're going to add this to Designer Edition or add it to Business Edition, you will get all of those new features. Unless they come out with Business Edition Pro or something like that, you're always going to get all the new things that come out. So that's one thing that I really love about it. And then Jerry, yes, if you were to do this specific design, do keep in mind that the script font has overlapping lines right now because it has not been converted over. So if you were going to save this, definitely right click it and you want to weld it to get rid of those overlapping lines and make that a new object. And then let's group that right there. The question, does it update automatically? Carrie, yes and no. So Silhouette Studio will check for updates for you, but I always recommend going to the website and downloading and reinstalling yourself. The check for updates function can be a little bit buggy, so I'll just go through and kind of check it. I'll go through and I like to check for updates every month and a half, 2 months, make sure I'm up to date. Or if my software is acting weird, kind of buggy, I'll go and see if there's an update available, because a lot of times these updates do solve some sort of bug that has happened in the system and I want to take care of it right away. And then I had a question for next weekend. Jim, I will not be at DAX next weekend. My next trade show is at the end of the month. I will be at the Pinners Conference in Atlanta, and then the following weekend I will be at Everything Embroidery Market in Biloxi, Mississippi. So let me go ahead. Do you have any other questions on file types or that sort of thing with Business Edition? And then I just saw someone asked about registration marks. So yes, registration marks, you're going to go up to the top right of your workspace. It's going to be this little like page. Click on there. Page setup. There are 3 tabs in there. 1, 2, 3. You're going to go to your 3rd tab, and then right here, registration marks style. You'll just click and do type 1, and then or for Cameo or Portrait or Curio, and then you're all set with there. I'm afraid to update because I don't want to lose all my files. Do you have a YouTube showing how to protect your library? Yes and no. Rose, I did do a video a while back on how to do it. However, I know that they did change that. Let me write that down, and I'm going to try to get that updated for you. One thing that you can do as well, Rose, is you can go over to your library here, sign into your Adobe Cloud, not Adobe, your Silhouette Cloud, and under your user designs, you can take these and drag them onto your user designs here. If it's in the cloud, it should make its way over, and then I will do a video on that to help you as well. I just saw, let me scroll I have a couple more questions as I'm looking on here. Let me just kind of bring that back. Does CorelDRAW work the same as Adobe Illustrator? Yes and no, Lisa. So CorelDRAW and Adobe are competitor programs, however, they have different areas that they specialize best in. Adobe is great for print stuff. It works primarily off of layers, whereas CorelDRAW works a lot off of lines and wireframe. The main difference between CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator functionally is that we do not have the wizard for Adobe Illustrator, unfortunately. Adobe makes it a little bit harder to do plugins, that sort of thing, and if you are working in the custom apparel industry, CorelDRAW is by leaps and bounds the industry leader there. Can files be imported in groups or one at a time? So with that, you can do them in groups. All you would have to do is you would have to just kind of drag them over. I recommend doing them one at a time because groups is actually a lot of times how I've corrupted files. So on the front end, bringing files over, a lot of them can take a little bit longer, but after that, you're all set. Silhouette 3 doesn't have a load media button. The Silhouette 3 only has a load and unload button. So it's really important, like I said earlier, in your page settings to designate if you're using a cutting mat or not. If I already have CorelDRAW, is this something else you recommend getting, or do they pretty much work the same? Yes and no. So the question was, she's learning, and if I have CorelDRAW, do I need anything else? So you basically have two directions you could go. You could do your designing in CorelDRAW, get Business Edition, and then just open your CorelDRAW files in there and cut. I would also suggest looking into getting the Design Wizard. Design Wizard is going to speed up your designing. It's going to make managing everything a lot easier. It's a really awesome program. And so with something like that, it might be a good option to go that direction as well. Just for the Business Edition today, is it difficult to download the program? Actually, let me show you this, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the features in Business Edition that you're going to get that are different than Designer Edition. So when you get your Business Edition code, what you're going to do is you're going to download Silhouette Studio. So you're going to have Silhouette Studio Basic Edition on your computer. Business Edition will give you a code. It's going to be 16 digits. All you have to do is go to Help, and then you're going to go right here, Upgrade Silhouette Studio. It's like 2/3 of the way down, and then you'll sign in and then enter in the code, and then it'll automatically give you that feature. So is Design Wizard compatible with the Cricut? No, unfortunately, Design Wizard only works in CorelDRAW. And so, is TRU in-house training only for the Wizard? Mildred, yes and no. We do focus a lot on the Wizard for in-house training. However, we do offer breakout sessions if you choose to only do Silhouette. So we kind of will cater it to what you need. All right. So let's talk about differences in Business Edition versus Designer Edition. So the first thing that I talked about were file types. You can save your files as SVG, which allows you to open it in multiple different programs. It allows you, when you upgrade your cutter, to still salvage the designs you used before. And then it also allows you to bring in different file types. So this is awesome if you are working with people who design for you. Let's say you're working with a company and they need their logo done. If they have an Illustrator file or a vector version, you can open it into Silhouette Studio, no problem. You don't have to say, hey, can you convert this over to an SVG for me? So you have that all set to go. Now, some of the other things that Business Edition does that is super awesome are things that help you save time and material. So if we go down to the bottom of our right toolbar, we're going to see you're going to either see this icon right here that has like little arrows going up and down, or you'll see an arrow going to the side. So depending on how big your screen resolution is, this button may not have fit in your toolbar. So let's go over to the Media Layout Setup panel. And so what this does is it helps speed up your production time without making you have to move around your design or anything like that. So right now we have one thing in here, we have our workspace, and then nothing in there. So if we go right here to Show Media Layout Split Screen, now what we're looking at is on the left is our design. This is, standard design space that we're used to. And then over on the right, this is basically like a bigger version of the cut screen we see right before we cut. So you'll know when we have our cut screen, we check our design, we have that big red line around it, we're checking a whole bunch of different things. So what Business Edition allows you to do is it lets you take a design. So let me go over to my library and I'll open this TRW circle that I have going on. So right here, we have our TRW, rhinestoneworld.com, and then let's open our Show Media Layout split screen. So I'm going to use this as my example. Now, one thing to note is that when we have our Show Media Layout split screen, I can put my design wherever I want it in here, and then the Media Layout split screen is going to bump my design to the corner to save as much material as possible. So for those of you who are Cricut users currently, this is very similar to the cut panel of Cricut. So what this is helping me do is it's helping me actually set up my design like this without having to move it to figure out the best way to save material. Now, a lot of times when I cut, I don't love it being right on the edge. I like having a border. So we can go right here and put a cut border in here. So I can do 0.125. And you can see it's going to give me a border on every side. So we're just going to put in the border for each side that we want. Oh, not 1.25, 0.125. 0.125, 0.125. So now I have a nice border around it. I don't have to worry about it. It's processing. And so we're all set with that. So now we know that our design is going to go right in there and we're all set over here. And another cool thing is with this media layout setup panel, let's say we have our design and it goes on a bunch of different things. Well, I don't want to have to keep resizing it for each item I cut. So let's say this is going, on a bag, but then this one I'm about to cut is actually going to go on a left chest piece. Then I can go over here and kind of adjust how I want it to be. And let's say I'm going to use a smaller piece of vinyl. I can go over here, adjust my vinyl like I would in my page panel, and kind of set up what I'm doing over there. So right here, we're going to go over. So this is our media size. So this is adjusting our vinyl that we're putting it down on. So if we go right here, we have our copy. So let's go ahead and I'm going to grab my design and let's go ahead and make this smaller. So let's say I want it to be 4 inches wide. So I have one, but I don't want to have to make a whole bunch of copies, okay? So if I'm doing this for a company, I don't want to have to take this, make a copy, make a copy, make a copy over here. I can go over to my media layout and let's say I want to do 3 rows. So I have 3 rows, and check this out. Because I have it limit to media, because that didn't fit, it's only going to do that. So let's go ahead, let's do 2 rows, and let's see if I can do 2 columns. So now I was able to duplicate this. And then I can also adjust my separation. So if I want to fit more on here, I can do a separation of 0.20 horizontally, and then I can do a separation of 0.20 vertically. And then check this out. I can do 2 rows, I can do 4 columns if I want. So check this out. See how it goes past here? So it's making those columns, so I can say, okay, just limit to my media. And now I know that I can fit 2 columns on there, and I can fit 2 rows. Not 3, but 2. Oh yeah, I can do 3 rows. So check this out. So now I have one design, but I'm all set with 6 of these all ready to go. And now this is, don't forget, I didn't mirror it. I should mirror it. Let me go right here, flip horizontally. And then it mirrors all of those for me. Okay, so this is good because I don't want to have to make a whole bunch of copies. I don't want to have to do a bunch of guessing. So we set that up like this. Let me go ahead and flip that horizontally again. So this is your copy function. So let's go ahead and just do 1, 1, aka have one object in here. So now what we have, and this is really cool, is we have our advanced nesting feature. So when you are working in the designer edition, and I believe the basic edition of Silhouette Studio, they both have a nesting feature in there. Now, the nesting in there is pretty limited. It will break apart your words. It doesn't do a whole bunch of turning. It's a good starter one. But let's say I have this Rhinestone World and then I want to do a bunch of names. Let's do Lisa, and we'll do Nick, and we'll do Matt, and I need a longer name. We all have short names here. Casey, Sergio. Richard's a longer name. Richard. All right, so we have these all set, and I'm just going to keep these in the basic Arial font just to get started. So let's go right here. Let's fill that in so you can see it better. Okay, so let's say we have that, and then Jerry, stop it. And then we're gonna go over here, and I'm gonna pull this little golden retriever from this Stay Golden design too. And let's copy this, bring this over here. So, and then we have, oops, it didn't copy, hold on. Copy, paste. Sometimes I move a little bit too quick and I guess I don't actually copy things. All right, so let's say we want to do a whole bunch of this and it's all going on the same color of vinyl. If the design didn't fit what it tell you, yeah, Jerry, it would like just freeze. And I can show you some of that too. So let's say I have this, and then let's go ahead and set up my media, and I only have an 8-inch by 9-inch piece of vinyl that I'm cutting on my cutting mat. Okay, so I'm trying to make this all fit, and actually I'm going to do 6 inches to see how that goes. So I want this to all fit. So if I were to select all of this, and then this is the original nesting, this is basic. If we went over here, use cut area, and then we can do padding. This is how much space is between them. Let's do padding 5, and we can do up to 16 rotations. If we go right here at nest, those are the only options we have, and so it's processing. So right now, because I have text in here, it's treating each letter individually as well. So well, first of all, we have to wait for it to process like this, which is never like super great. Hi, Shay. So we're kind of waiting it out. So this is one of the things. And then check this out. Like, why? Why did this happen? It broke apart my words, and it put things right on top of it. So maybe this version of nesting, like maybe they think there's like magic vinyl that has 2 layers underneath it. I don't know. But we don't want that. We certainly do not want that. So let's go over here, and we're going to do Control Z to go back. So we're all set with this. So let's go over here, and we're going to open our media layout, and we are going to do our split screen, and let's go to the nesting over here. Okay, so we have our design set here. You can see it still doesn't fit. So let's go ahead and turn on our nesting, and then we have way more options in here. So right here, here's a live preview. This is not looking very good to start. And also, I don't know where the dog went. Maybe if I move it more in here. Oh, so one thing to note, and I bet this is what happened. My dog isn't cutting, probably because it was an SVG file, so I bet you anything these cut lines are turned off. So let's go over here to our send panel, and we're going to turn on cut. We have to wait for it to process. There's my dog. It showed back up. So let's go back to design. So yes, that's one thing to keep in mind. When SVG files come into Silhouette Studio, a lot of times the cut lines are turned off. So you have to click on your design and go to your send panel and click on cut to turn them on. So right here, let's go back to our nesting, and I'm going to slide this over so you can see it a little bit better. Here's our nesting. This does not do me any good if I'm cutting out vinyl because the names are not together. Like if I'm cutting paper, maybe, but it's not super great either. So let's go over here. And so we have interlock. This is basically, it's going to find the closest way to nest it as possible. Like it's like going to really work its way in. It's like when you have a ton of dishes and you need to make it fit the absolute best in your dishwasher. So you do that. So let's go ahead and turn this off. So maintain grain. So this is what you would use if you're using a pattern vinyl, a pattern scrapbook paper. What it does is maintain grain recognizes, okay, if I have a pattern that goes across, whatever, it really has to go a certain way. So what it does is it only flips it so that the pattern still goes through correctly. Essentially it either flips it this way or this way, but still tries to find a way to make it fit in there. So if we go right here to maintain grain, you're going to see that all of my letters are either going to be straight up or down or not. So we have that, and then of course, since this didn't fit very well, it went to the next one. So let's go ahead, let's turn off maintain grain. We don't need that. This is the thing that I love the most in it. We can click on whole words. So this will keep my words together. So I don't have to worry about having to convert them over. I can just do it and set it up. So we have our whole words, and then we have maintain groups. So the way that works is it's going to keep, so let's say I want Lisa and I want it with the dog. So I'm going to have Lisa and the dog. So I'm over here on the left side. I'm on the design side. I'm going to click on Lisa, and I'm going to hold shift and click on the dog. Hold on one second. There you go. We have our dog, and now I'm going to right click, and let's group this. So now, because we maintain groups, check out the right side. See this right here? Lisa is with the dog. It is exactly the same as it was before. So that's one thing that I really love about it, especially if you have to cut a whole bunch of different things. You don't have to worry about adjusting a whole bunch of stuff in here. And then we can go right here. We can do our parameters. Let's say it can rotate up to 16 times. And then for padding, I want a little bit of space. Let's go ahead and do 3 and hit enter. And don't forget, it might process. Probably your computer will go faster than mine. Do keep in mind that I'm actually running our webinar software and a screen recording software and Silhouette Studio. So just one thing to keep in mind. So now we have that all set, and then all we have to do is kind of set up our padding, and then we're all set with that. So that is our nesting. So do you guys have any questions on the features that I've gone through so far, or do you feel pretty good about it? So now for this next one, I'm going to kind of turn off split screen because I want to show you something else. So I'm going to get rid of all this extra stuff, and we're going to work on this little TRW here. So just a preference thing, I like setting mine to 12 inches by 12 inches. For me, I think I don't know, it's easier for me to work in there if it's a perfect square. Don't ask me why. It's like a weird quirk that I have. So the thing that I love about Business Edition, you know, besides the file type, my second favorite thing is the tiling feature. So the limitations that we have as Silhouette users is that our cutter only cuts 12 inches wide. How did I turn it off? That was a good question. So let me go over here and let me turn it back on. So whenever we have our media layout set up, this check mark split screen turns it on and off. So once I don't want the split screen, I'm just going to uncheck that and turn it off. Cool. So like I was saying, the thing that we're most limited is our 12-inch cutting area. Most of the time it doesn't affect you, but when you want to do big wall decals, that's where the issue comes into play. So let's say I wanted to put this on our wall. I'm going to go up here. I'm in the top. I'm going to lock my orientation. I'm going to resize this to be 24 inches wide and then 20 inches tall. So this is a big design. Yes, Stephanie, there will be a recording we'll put on YouTube. So no matter how you want to set up this design, it's not going to go in one cut on your machine. The great thing about the Cameo is that you can cut longer than the mat. I think the longest cut I did was 8 feet. No, 6 feet. I did 6 feet on my Cameo. So you can do a long cut. However, if it's both too wide and too long, you're not gonna fit it. So that is where our Business Edition comes into play. Instead of having to like use the knife tool, find a way to break apart your design, Silhouette's gonna do all of that for us. So let's go right here and let's do our media size first. So I am going to do this on 12 by 12 sheets of decal vinyl. Now you can set this up just like you would your page panel for different sizes, and I'll come back and show that to you as well. So I'm going to use a cutting mat, and I'm going to use 12 by 12 vinyl. So I have this all set. I like to put my border in, and then let's go right here to our tiling, and let's do tiling active. So now if you look over here, we have these little squares that show up. You see that? So this is basically a chart or a map of what each one of these areas are going to be. So you can also adjust this. So let's say I don't want so much free space next to this. I can kind of take this, and I just have to move this on my screen. I can take it, but one thing to note is our rhinestone world down here is all the way over there. So we're going to keep it like that, and we're going to set it up. So now what this does is it breaks up my cut into all these sections. So the one bad thing is that we have this tiny little extra section down here with the .com. So with something like this, I would actually turn off tiling and make my design just a little bit smaller so I don't have that extra section. So let's go ahead and bring this smaller, and let's do our split screen. And here's my tiling, so I have 4 cuts here. So tiling active, and so we're going to do user defined. So all of this I mainly keep the same, and you want to maintain your aspect. You don't want it to get warped. So what this is we have this broken up, and then right here at the bottom we have our margin. So margin means an overlap. If you're doing decal vinyl, I like to do a tiny margin. That way, you know, it's easier to apply. So I'll do 0.04. So what this does, it does a tiny little overlap between all of our sizes, and then we have this set over here. So configure a regular grid. We can do automatic, and it makes my grid for me, which this is basically the same. And then custom is great because you can adjust how your grid works. So we can go right here and, you know, bring this up if we want, or bring this down. You know, we can kind of have that all set there. So we have our grid right here, and now we're all set with that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is gonna be 4 cuts. So the way this works is that we're gonna be able to set this up to cut, and then don't forget we have, this is basically our cut panel. So once we're all set, okay, our design is set, we're gonna go over to our send panel. And so here is what's going to send. So you can see we have our 4 cuts here. So I'm gonna turn on my Cameo. I'm not gonna cut because I don't have anything loaded. I'm not gonna do that. So, oh, my margin stayed at 0. I would fix that if I were actually cutting, Carrie, but thank you so much. So it says 1, 2, 4, 5. Jamie, I'm not super sure. I think maybe Silhouette forgot to count because these are clearly all the sections in there. I wish I had a better answer. I've never seen it do 1, 2, 4, 5, and if I'm being totally honest, Jamie, I was hoping no one noticed that, but we'll be okay. So with that, we're gonna set it up to cut, and actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this up for. I'm gonna take my blade out so it doesn't actually cut, so I can show you something. So my blade is out. I'm not gonna cut. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna pretend like we're loading. So, okay, yep, we're gonna do a wall decal. So let me use my setting that I normally use for FDC. Shay, yes, she asked if it will stop and pause. Yes, that's why I took my blade out, because I'm gonna show you. So we're gonna go over here. Let's go ahead and send. So my machine's gonna go. It's adjusting the auto blade that's not in there. So we're gonna keep going and let that go. So you guys have any questions while I'm letting this cut? I'm sorry, it's gonna be loud. Wow, look at it go, it's really cutting. It's funny is I checked it to make sure, even though I know I have the blade here. So you can see I have this going. We're gonna kind of set this up. So we have about 4 minutes left in this. What's the difference in cut edge and cut? So to be totally honest, cut edge in my computer doesn't always work. So basically, cut and cut edge, cut's gonna cut every single line. Cut edge is only gonna cut the very outside of it. So if we were to do cut edge with this design, it wouldn't cut like the inside part of this R. Okay, so my cutter stopped. So it says job complete, but on my screen it says paused. So we're gonna go over, I'm done with this one, let's do unload. Oh wow, I'm ready for my next cut. Let's do load. And then we would click right here to resume. And so now it's doing my second panel. Okay. So I'm gonna let that go for a second. I'm not gonna do all 4 because I'm not actually cutting. Missed the answer, does the TRW Wizard work with Corel Student Edition? Unfortunately, it doesn't. The Wizard has to work in the full graphic suite of Corel X6 and up, so that would be considered the OEM version. So now that I did the second one, I'm gonna go over here and cancel it. And then we're going to cancel a job. So, and are you sure you want to cancel? Yes, I'm sure. So let's go over here and let's go to our design. And so let's say someone asks, what if I mess something up and I have to restart? That's not a problem because I mess up these cuts all the time, okay? So right here for tiling, we just go over to selected tiles only. So I want to cut, let's say I messed up the third one, so I need to recut that one. I'll just do 3, hit enter. So, the third one is the one that's not there. Let's do 4, hit enter. So check this out. It's going to show me over here the tile that I'm going to cut. And then here it is over in my cut settings. So then my layout area. And then we go to send. And so now it's just going to cut this one little panel here. So that's what you would do if you messed one up. Will it work with the rhinestones also? Yep, it's going to work with any design you have in there. Rhinestones get a little bit tricky, so I would not suggest doing a really big design with rhinestones if you can avoid it. Mary, email us. We have a decent amount. That one I would have to look up a little bit more, but just send us an email. That's not a problem. So right here we have it paused. I'm just gonna kind of that one it's gonna go like that. So we're gonna disconnect my Cameo. Oh no, I actually started it over. Sorry. I'm just pausing it. Cancel job. Yes, I want to cancel. And now the last thing, so here are things that are in Business Edition that I love. We have our file types, we have our media layout, our nesting, our tiling, and then the last thing that's going to save you a lot of time and money is that you can run multiple machines at once. So for me personally, I have a few Cameos. I have some at the office and then I have some for myself. So a lot of times when our business is growing, getting a bigger cutter is a little bit of a jump. However, a $269.99 Cameo is a good thing to do in the meantime. So whenever you're doing a design and you want to run it on multiple cutters, we're going to go over here. I'm going to turn off my split screen. I'm going to make this design like it fits in this normal space. So let's say we have our design in here. And we have this set right here. So we want to do this on a bunch of cutters. We have a big order, lots of shirts, and we want to do multiple cutters. So whenever you go to your send panel, if you have multiple cutters, they're going to show up down here. So let's say I have, all my cutters in here. I only have one plugged in right now, but so we're going to pretend there's one down here. We can name them. So right here, I can click on here, Sparkle Cameo. So I'll say, okay, this is my Sparkle Cameo. Or if you have multiple ones, you can number them. So you can do Cameo 1, Cameo 2, Cameo 3, that sort of thing. When you have your multiple cutters, you'll just set your design, set up your settings, and then you'll have send right underneath that cutter. So with that, you can just do, here's it, go right here, go to send, here's it, go to my next one, go to send. You can even do multiple designs. So let's say you have this design here, and then right after you want to cut your golden design, you would just go to your send panel, grab the Cameo that you're going to cut, and go to send from there. So really cool. I love doing that. I'm going to try to get a hub and see how many machines I can cut to at once. I have to see if I'm allowed to do that, but I think it'd be pretty cool. So that's one thing that I do. I've done that at home before when I've done things for parties and events. It's awesome. And so Ruth says, do you worry about watching multiple machines? Honestly, I don't. If you get your loading correct and you're good at your cut settings, 1 or 2 machines, 3 machines really is not that big of a deal. As long as you know you're confident in how you load one, then the other ones would be great. Yes, 2 cameos, Suzanne. Yeah, you can definitely cut to 2 cameos at once. You can definitely up your production speed. You're also going to up how loud that room is because we know that our cameo is kind of loud, but hey, it's no big deal. So what Joe asked, have you ever been successful getting the Cameo 3 wirelessly? I can't get mine to work. I have cut through Bluetooth on my Cameo 3. I have used it on occasion. I will be totally honest as far as the Cameo 3 Bluetooth goes. It has been very buggy. Over the air connection is really tough. Me personally, my cut settings don't come over correctly. So even though I've put in really good cut settings, it'll cut through my carrier. It'll do really weird things. I have shared in other webinars. I was at a trade show once. I wasn't even near my machine, but I was cutting Bluetooth because I didn't want to cord. I looked over and my machine was just cutting. There was no design in my workspace, it was just cutting. So after that, I decided, hey, I am not going to use Bluetooth, at least not now. I will say, however, there is a beta version of the software that I've been testing for a couple months, and they do have open beta for everyone to test. I wouldn't recommend downloading beta unless you're really good at Silhouette, and a lot of the improvements in the beta version have to do with the Bluetooth cutting. So it looks like on the horizon we may have a more stable version of Bluetooth cutting, but what I always recommend is use the USB if you can. How do you hook up multiple machines? I have a Cameo and Cameo 3. The same as you would, Lorraine. You would just plug your USB. Each USB for the computer will plug into your computer, and once you have multiple machines in there, your Silhouette Studio will recognize you have multiple machines, and so you'll have like a list that will show up here of all your machines. Do you have a cheat sheet to share with your cut settings for different materials and blade? Yes, Carrie, that's a great question. So let me go over here and let me open our website, therhinestoneworld.com. Let me bring that over. So if you guys have any questions while I'm looking this up, please feel free to ask them. Having trouble with weeding, any suggestions? Jerry, it's really all a matter of how your cut settings are. You want to check to see if your cut settings are too deep, not deep enough, how detailed your design is. When in doubt, slow down your machine a lot. And of course, our machines are not magic, so if you have a really complicated small design, it may not work super great. So if you go to support, resources, and then we're going to go over to documentation and FAQs. So under that, we're going to see our cutter specs and recommended cut settings. Now don't forget, these are a guideline. You do have to do test cuts. You do have to see, you know, what works best for your machine. Every machine's a little bit different. Your blade might be worn a little bit, you know, it's all different things like that. But if we go to our recommended cut settings, we're just gonna go over here, go through, and the Cameo settings are the first page. So you'll see we have our recommended cut settings right here. So we have that on our website, all set. And then, oh, Jerry had a good question, and this is one thing that I did forget. Weed lines, Business Edition has automated weed lines. So that's really cool because if we have, let's say we have this Stay Golden right here, we can go right here and do a whole bunch in there. Actually, let me kind of do it with text. So let me go over here, test, and then do a whole bunch. Test, 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 test. So I did a board for a wedding. I did a seating chart for my sister-in-law's wedding, and it was like so many names. And so what saved me is I did automated weed lines. So let's say we're going to cut all this right here, and we're going to go over to this panel, and right here, right next to our media layout, we have weed settings. So we're going to go over, and actually, sorry, we're going to go over to this one, and we are going to go over to, one second. Yeah, sorry, it's not in there. It's weed lines, and it's right next to your cut settings. So let's go ahead, go to our weed lines. We want to turn them on. So let's say we have horizontal. It's going to make a line across it horizontally. Not a whole lot there. Vertical, we're going to do a vertical line. We can do horizontal and vertical. And then we can do what's called recursive. So it's going to find everything in there and do a box around it. So we do have padding, so you can make it a little bit closer. So you're going to 0.125. Do a little bit closer. So what this does is it basically will take your design and do a little box around each section so that when you're peeling it up, you don't have to peel a whole big chunk. It'll make it easier to weed as well. Jerry, send me an email. I'll see if I can check it out. There might be something in there. And then also, how often do you need a new blade? The machine I used for business. So Elizabeth, it's really a matter of what you're cutting and how often. So for me personally, I was cutting every day, not huge quantities because I'm just doing testing, but I'm cutting every day and I'm cutting a bunch of different things. I used the same blade for about a year, year and a half. The auto blade in the Cameo is a premium blade so that it does last a little bit longer. One thing that I will suggest is if you're doing a lot of paper cutting, I would have a separate blade. Don't use the same one for your paper and vinyl. Just because paper is going to wear it down so quickly, I like to have it separate just so I'm not always replacing my blade when I need to cut vinyl. All right. So do you guys have any other questions on Business Edition or anything about the Silhouette software or anything like that?